I asked you guys which flag you wanted and you voted, so here it is. Egypt, land of the pharaohs, Cleopatra, the pyramids, we all know it. It's arguably one of the world's oldest civilizations, which through a lot of changes and evolutions of course, has lasted until today. Today's Egyptian flag looks like this, a tricolor horizontal flag, black, white, and red, with a golden eagle in its center. But before we get into the meaning of the current flag, let's take a look at how we got here and learn about the history of the Egyptian flag. Like I said, Egypt has been around for a while. The first dynasty took place in the Archaic period, starting around 3100 BC. That's over 5,000 years ago. Egypt's history can be sort of divided into 5 phases, if you will. The first is Ancient Egypt, Classical Antiquity Egypt, the Middle Ages, Early Modern Egypt, and Modern Times. As we know, and I mentioned this in pretty much every single video, flags as a symbol of national identity are somewhat recent. However, as far back as Egypt's conception as a nation, we can find some symbols, or even standards at times, which serve the same purpose as flags, representing the rulers, the people, or the regions. So let's start with Ancient Egypt. The early dynasties had no recorded symbols that we could argue replace flags. At most, we could say that their art, their plates, sculptures, etc. served as their cultural representation. The religious symbols of their gods or images of the gods themselves or animals which they glorified and worshipped, like eagles, snakes, or cats. Moving on to Classical Antiquity Egypt, we get the first presence of something remotely close to a flag. During the 27th dynasty of Egypt, which began in 525 BC, we have the standard of Cyrus the Great, known as the Falcon Standard. This is a recreation, however it was made based on a tile found at Persepolis in 1948, because at this time in classical antiquity, Egypt was a province of the Achaemenid Empire. Throughout the rest of this phase, the tendency of representation continues through religion and animals, like this coin of Artaxerxes III, a pharaoh, which imitates Greek coins by using an owl. After this comes the occupation, or at least influence, of Macedonia and then the Roman Empire in Egypt. So arguably during these times, the standards flying over their land are those of the respective occupying forces. During the Middle Ages, we have the time of the caliphs. These tended to use symbols which were more related to the Muslim faith rather than the traditional Egyptian ones. And it is in this time period that we get the first actual flag of Egypt, sort of. During the time of Abbasid, from 750 to 1517, their flag was a simple black rectangle. And I feel like this is the case with a lot of early flags everywhere in the world. Colored standards were always used to represent troops in battle, so they just weren't seen as an official representation of a nation because there wasn't any real need of that. When the time came for that need, it makes sense that they would first use these simple banners. The black banner of the Abbasids is famous in local history, so I think we can say that it was indeed a flag. Simultaneously, during this period, since rulers were in control of Egypt on and off, we have the Ayyubid dynasty, who also had a flag very similar to that of the Abbasid, a simple color, except a golden yellow instead of black. Some records also say that the yellow banner was emblazoned with an eagle, but I couldn't find any image of that. Also during this time, there was the Mamluk Sultanate in Cairo, which also used a flag to represent their rule. This one, a double-tailed flag with a round or point end, in yellow color and displaying a crescent, we can suppose in representation of the Muslim faith. In this 16th century drawing, we can see 3 Mamluk lancers carrying spears with this same standard. And now we move on to the early modern Egypt, meaning the Ottomans. After 1817, Egypt was an eyalet of the Ottoman Empire, therefore using the empire's flag as their own. The Ottoman flag we all know is this one, a red field displaying a white crescent and star. I won't get too much into this one because I want to make a full video on Turkey's flag. For a brief period of time, 1867 to 1881, Egypt used a similar flag except using 3 stars. Eventually, they became the Caliphate of Egypt, an autonomous tributary state of the Ottomans. From 1864 to 1914, they used this other different but also very similar flag, a red field, white crescent, and 3 stars. At this time, British influence in Egypt began to grow, and we arrive at modern times. From 1914 to 1922, Egypt became a formal protectorate of the British Empire, known as the Sultanate of Egypt. During this time, they kept the same 3 crescent, 3 star red flag, alongside that of the British Empire. In 1919, this flag, bearing a crescent and a cross, was used in a revolt against British occupation, symbolizing the common struggle of Muslims and Christians in the region. 3 years later, in 1922, Egypt became independent as the Kingdom of Egypt, despite being continuously under British influence until the end of World War II. They created a new flag, an adaptation of the previous one, a green field with 1 white crescent in the center and 3 stars inside it. The green color is highly associated with Islam, as is the crescent. The 3 stars are said to symbolize the 3 component territories of the Kingdom of Egypt: Egypt, Nubia, and Sudan. Some people also say that the green signifies the agricultural nature of the country, and that the 3 stars also represent the 3 religious communities: Muslims, Christians, and Jews. And then came the revolution of 1952, where Egypt became a republic. From 52 to 58, the de facto flag in use was the revolution flag, very similar to the current national flag of Egypt. Red, white, and black with the Republican eagle in its center, bearing the green field with the white crescent and stars. From 1958 to 1971, this similar flag, replacing the eagle with 2 green stars, was put into use, as Egypt became a member of the United Arab Republic along with Syria, each star representing each of the 2 member states. From 71 to 84, they became a member of another union, the Federation of Arab Republics, along with Libya and Syria, using this common flag which very much resembles their current one. The Golden Hawk of Quraysh holds a text stating the name of the federation. After the dissolution of these temporary unions, Egypt regained its full sovereignty and adopted their current national flag. A lot of proposals were submitted, many of them merging the old Egyptian kingdom flag with the modern tricolor one, some adding mountains and some adding a representation of the Nile River. But they chose this one instead. So this is Egypt's flag today. In its center, the eagle of Saladin represents power and strength, holding the text Republic of Egypt. The meaning of the colors is always very subjective. Some say that the red represents the struggle against British occupation, the white the 1952 peaceful revolution, and the black the end of the oppression of the people by monarchism and colonialism. The eagle of Saladin goes back to the revolution of 1952 as well, where it was used as the main symbol. It is said to have been a symbol of Cairo and Egypt when Saladin first ruled over the Egyptians. It is supposed to be inspired by the ancient Egyptian vulture drawn on the walls of Egyptian temples. Other countries in the world, mostly in the Middle East, use similar flags to that of Egypt, perhaps due to their common history, like Yemen, Syria, or Iraq. So that is a brief overlook at the history and meaning of the Egyptian flag, what other flags represented the region, how the current one came to be, and it's somewhat an evolution of all previous ones, gathering its colors, symbols, and serving as a way to represent the nation of Egypt, along with its long history and accompanying customs. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you notice any mistakes, have any additional information, or just want to give your opinion, make sure to leave a comment below. Remember to subscribe if you want to catch future videos, and I will see you next time.